What if the vegetables that you've been avoiding because they cause inflammation are actually anti inflammatory? Today, we're clearing up a persistent nutrition myth about nightshade vegetables, a category that includes some super nutritious options that you don't want to avoid if you don't need to, and you probably don't. Welcome to the Nutrition Diva podcast, where we take a closer look at nutrition news, research, and trends so that you can feel more confident about what you eat. I'm your host, Monica Reinagel, and today we're talking about nightshade vegetables, a topic that I get a lot of questions about. Tomatoes, potatoes, peppers, and eggplant all belong to a botanical family known as the nightshades. And depending on which corner of the internet you land in, you might hear that these vegetables are a hidden cause of joint pain or digestive issues or inflammation. This concern over nightshades as a potential source of inflammation gained traction in the 1980s, and it was largely due to a horticulturalist named Norman Childers, who claimed that eliminating nightshades dramatically improved his arthritis symptoms. And he went on to collect thousands of anecdotal reports from others who said the same. These reports were based on personal experiences, not controlled scientific studies. And as we'll see, more recent and rigorous research paints a very different picture. The plants that are popularly referred to as nightshades belong to a large family of plants called Solanaceae. And they're called that because they contain a naturally occurring alkaloid called solanine. This compound actually acts as a natural insect repellent, protecting the plant from marauding aphids and beetles and other pests. In addition to tomatoes and potatoes, although not sweet potatoes, that's a totally different family, but also eggplants, tomatillos, and bell peppers. The Solanaceae family also includes chili peppers and spices like paprika and cayenne, as well as a bunch of non-edible plants like tobacco and petunias. All told, there are over 2,000 different kinds of plants in the Solanaceae family, including the infamous deadly nightshade, also known as belladonna. The ancient Romans reportedly used belladonna as a biological weapon, contaminating enemy food supplies. The wives of Roman emperors Claudius and Augustus are both believed to have used belladonna to poison their husbands. And deadly nightshade is also thought to be the compound that Juliet uses to fake her own death in Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. However, it's not the solanine in deadly nightshade that makes it so dangerous. It's other compounds that work on the central nervous system. And one of these, scopolamine, is used pharmaceutically in very carefully controlled dosages to treat conditions like motion sickness. Another one, atropine, is often administered as eye drops to dilate your pupils before an eye exam. Now, solanine can also be toxic to humans if it's ingested in very high amounts, but most of the solanine in these plants is concentrated in the stems and the leaves, and that's one of the reasons that we generally don't eat potato or tomato leaves. And even if you did, you would have to eat 1 or 2 cups of potato leaves to actually get yourself in trouble. The amount that you'd get from eating the edible parts of nightshade vegetables is much, much less, and it's generally far too little to cause any harm unless you are among the very small percentage of folks who are sensitive to solanine. True allergies to nightshades are extremely rare. They are estimated to affect less than 1% of the population. And this type of allergy would typically show up as a classic allergy symptom like hives, swelling, or even difficulty breathing shortly after you eat the food. Intolerances to solanine, on the other hand, may be a bit more common, but they can also be a lot harder to pin down. Because, for one thing, the appearance of the symptoms may be delayed by a few hours or even a few days, and that makes it difficult to make a clear connection with specific foods. And for another thing, food sensitivities can cause a very wide range of symptoms, everything from fatigue to joint pain to belly aches. Now, interestingly, most of the documented sensitivities to nightshades involve digestive symptoms, so things like bloating or nausea or GI discomfort, and not inflammatory symptoms like joint pain. Now, if you suspect that nightshades, or really any food for that matter, might be triggering symptoms, the most reliable way to test that theory is with an elimination and reintroduction protocol. So, this process involves removing all nightshades, or whatever food it is that you suspect, from your diet for several weeks. And then you gradually reintroduce them one by one while monitoring your symptoms. So, if your symptoms resolve during that elimination phase and then also return when a specific food is added back in, that's a much stronger indication of a sensitivity. But if nothing changes, that suggests that these foods are not really a problem for you, and it appears that this is the case for the vast majority of the population. In response to these persistent rumors about nightshades, organizations like the Arthritis Foundation and the Cleveland Clinic have both gone on record to say that there's no credible research showing that nightshades cause or worsen inflammation or arthritis. In fact, if anything, the opposite seems to be true, because many of these vegetables also contain potent anti-inflammatory compounds. Tomatoes, for example, are rich in lycopene. It's a carotenoid that has been shown to inhibit inflammatory pathways. Bell peppers are rich in quercetin and luteolin, two other anti-inflammatory flavonoids. Chili peppers contain capsaicin. This is the compound that's responsible for their heat, but also for their anti-inflammatory and pain-relieving properties. And here's an interesting twist. Even solanine, the compound that's often blamed for nightshade-related inflammation, has been shown in lab studies to have anti-inflammatory effects, mostly by modulating certain immune pathways. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that everyone responds the same way, but it really does challenge the idea that these foods are inherently inflammatory. In fact, foods like tomatoes, peppers, and chilies are often emphasized in diets specifically designed to be anti-inflammatory. And widening the lens even a bit more, diets rich in these and other vegetables generally reduce the risk of cardiovascular disease and certain cancers. In other words, for the vast majority of people, eliminating these super nutritious vegetables is unlikely to reduce inflammation, and it comes at the expense of a lot of great nutrition. And of course, nightshades aren't just nutritious, they're also central to so many global cuisines. I mean, it's hard to imagine Indian food without chili, or Italian food without tomatoes, or Latin American dishes without peppers. As I mentioned earlier, if you suspect that you may be among this small minority that is sensitive to solanine, it might be worth a structured elimination and reintroduction protocol to test that theory. But here's a word to the wise. One common mistake that people make with elimination diets is trying to test too many things at once, or not reintroducing foods systematically. And that makes it really hard to draw any clear conclusions. If you're going to take the time to eliminate a group of foods like nightshades, make sure you have a plan for how you're going to test each one. And ideally, this is something that you would like to do under the guidance of a nutrition professional. But if you've never noticed any specific issues and have just been wary of these vegetables because you've heard that they're inflammatory, I think you may be doing yourself a disservice. These foods are nutrient powerhouses. They can absolutely be part of a healthy diet and an anti-inflammatory diet for most people. If you have a question you'd like me to answer, you can email me at nutrition@quickanddirtytips.com. And if you'd like to find out about having me speak at your next live or virtual event, you can learn more at wellnessworkshere.com. Nutrition Diva is a Quick and Dirty Tips podcast. Holly Hutchings is our director of podcasts. Steve Riekeberg is my audio engineer. Morgan Christensen heads up podcast operations and advertising. Thanks so much also to Nat Hoops for his support. But most of all, thanks to you for listening. I'll see you next week.